Hello everybody and welcome to this interview this morning. My name is Meg and I work for the Children, Youth and Family team of the Methodist Church, and today I'm joined by a couple of guests and we're going to be reflecting upon the situation as it's evolving at the moment with children and young people returning to schools on Monday. Recognising of course that in different places across the country some children have already been at school for a long time for various different reasons. But there'll be a whole big number of young people who are this weekend perhaps thinking and worrying possibly about going back to school on Monday. So I'm joined today by two people. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you with us. Firstly, we've got James Royal. James is the executive head of Blackrod Church School, which is up in the northwest. That is one of 66 maintained Methodist schools that we have across the country. And the Methodist Academies and Schools Trust, which we abbreviate to MAST, James also works for them and is the school improvement lead. So welcome, James, this morning.
Thank you.
And then we're also joined by Jo Porter, who is also a teacher, a Senko at her school, but is also a parent of two children and attends her local Methodist church. So we're going to have some interesting perspectives this morning. So my first question, I guess, for you to kind of think about, because you've both been around children in the preceding months, you have a really good understanding of this, but what do you think are the main concerns at the moment that children are perhaps feeling about this return to school, whether they've been in school and the kids are coming back in, or whether they're going back in for the first time in quite a number of months? What do you think are their main concerns? James, shall we start with you? What do you think about that?
Yeah, thank you. I think in any organisational structure, the first thoughts that you go to are about routine and structures, and I think that we will go from a number of perhaps about 80 children in our school to 250, 260. So making sure all of those routines are established and all the health and safety measures are in place are key. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because I think that the biggest thought for us is to be sure that when we get our children back into the classrooms, the relationships that they will have been managing in a different way are able to blossom and flourish again. And that's the relationships they have with each other and also the relationships that they have with their teachers. We know that happy children are good learning children and that they develop the best. So before we can get to the point at which we can start thinking about where we want them to be academically, we know that we've got to make sure that they're settled and that they're reformed in those really strong bonds. What we found the last time, we're lucky in some ways because we've practiced this once already, we've done a return already, and we can reflect on some of those key bits of learning. What we found is that actually children reform those bonds really, really quickly. So we're going to make sure we do lots of stuff around connection and engagement and collaboration. And I think really when we start to get onto the thinking about learning, we'll focus on the very practical elements of learning that perhaps might not have been quite as possible with resources at home. So the things like singing together or building volcanoes or doing those sorts of great fun things that we might not have been able to have an opportunity to do at the expense of doing other brilliant things as well. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think I'm interested also knowing that there have been children in school for, as you were saying, the key workers children. Have you picked up on any anxieties or concerns that they are having about other people coming back in all of a sudden?
Yes, well, anxieties, I think sort of uncertainty probably is a good phrase. What we found from those children in school is that they've loved it. They've loved being in school when it's really quiet, when there's loads of space, when they can do what they want and they can have the football at playtime. They can do all of those things. So helping to reassure them that being able to be with their friends again is going to sort of supersede those feelings of, well, are we all going to fit in kind of a thing. But again, I think that they are just generally, they're sort of very quick to fix those issues, hopefully. And my expectation, given where we were last time, is that as soon as they see the faces of their friends again, those worries will be forgotten very quickly.
Yeah. So Jo, coming to you, you've got children yourself who are returning to school. What do you think their concerns are at the moment? What are they talking to you about going back to school?
So my eldest daughter is 7, so she's in year 3. And for her, I mean, to be honest, the honest response is that she wasn't quite sure that it was actually going to happen, that she was actually going to go back to school. She's ended up rather cynical, to be fair, and it sort of says, oh, is it really going to happen? Are we going back? I mean, for her, she is very excited. She has had a varied experience for this nearly almost year, because she was in key worker provision. My husband's a police officer. So she's been in key worker provision in the first lockdown. And then this lockdown, we chose to keep her at home because we felt less children needed to be in and I could work remotely. So she's had a very varied experience of the whole situation. So we've seen all kinds of emotions from her. But this time, I think she just is hoping this is the last time she's going to have to go through this experience of 1 minute being at school and then the next minute not being at school. And it's like the yo-yo effect of that. And I think her nerves are more based around, being around other children all the time, because you sort of forget the impact of children being at home. They're almost become just locked, but they sort of feel trapped in their house and they're very safe and secure in their little family unit that's there, and then they're suddenly back coping with all the social situations and things that go on at school. So I think that's her only wobble, but she is quite looking forward to it. But then, truth be told, like most children, she sort of says, oh no, I'm going to have to sit through an hour of maths now at school and this kind of thing. So there's elements where they prefer to be at home. So yeah, and my little one is 3. For her, she is going to start at nursery next week. She could have been in as well for the whole time, but we chose to hold back. And she is really excited to start nursery, because the sad thing for her that she's been saying, for her living memory this last year, things she remembers is only coronavirus related. Yeah. She thinks everything is about when she will just say, when the virus is better, can we do this? And she can't see any other normality. And she's got to a point at home where she now is it's very sad. She says, will I make a friend soon, Mummy? She wants to make a friend because she's just been around her big sister, and although we've had little pockets, haven't we, where we've been able to see people, it's not been anything sustained. And so she's actually now, her play has gone towards having imaginary friends, and she plays with her imaginary friends in the house. And for her, socialisation is really the key now. She's so excited to go to nursery and make some friends. So it's very mixed in my house. You sort of get that emotional up and down from them. Yeah. Oh,
that's really interesting. Thanks for that. So James, obviously lots of worries or concerns perhaps from the pupils as well as from the parents. How are schools preparing? How's your school preparing, getting ready for this?
Sure, there's certainly a big job on their hands. I would like to say I think that Joe's eldest daughter should go into politics. It sounds like she's got the right the right ideas, certainly. There are lots of things to try and do in these 2 weeks. It was really very welcome that the minister had said that he was going to make sure that we had time to prepare. Because we shut down very, very quickly. Within 24 hours, we had to move to a very different sort of provision. And certainly in my school, we decided to take this as a really present opportunity to try reset the clock to a certain extent. We know that the person that the government have appointed to oversee what they're terming as catch up is doing some kind of a review of the broader scope and reach of education. But what we want to do is to really think carefully about how best to start again. We want to ensure that we create an environment that kids are really engaged with very, very quickly, so that they'll walk in through the doors and they'll be immersed in imagination and creativity, so that kind of just sort of hooks them in. We want to be able to get them right. And we're thinking very carefully about the use of our language. We're not talking about catch up in my school. We're talking about bouncing back, because we think, if you're running a race and you know that you've got to catch up, you're never going to get to the front. You know that you're never going to get there. But if what you feel that you can do is just bounce back with energy and with momentum, then we think that that's a much more positive way of starting again. And we're also mindful that some of the staff need to feel a bit like that too. You know, we know that some will feel a little bit anxious, even though I think most of them are desperate to be back at work. But we want to be able to create a very energetic and positive environment that's practically and tangibly very visual, but also emotionally very, very encouraging and very worthwhile in that sense. And we're looking, as I said earlier on, we're looking at making sure that we cover some key bits of English learning and some key bits of maths learning, but we're also really, really going to focus on as much of the practical and collaborative learning as we can. Those things that we know that at homes, for all of the really brilliant work that they've done, they might just not have had the resources or the capacity to be able to do. So, some really, really good quality investigative science work, or getting outside and doing some digging around and creating pictures and sculptures and things like that. And finally, really, I think the thing that we're really, really keen to do is to make sure that when we look back on what's happened over the last 12 months, knowing, of course, that it's been really difficult for a lot of children and a lot of families, that there have been some brilliant things that have happened at homes. Kids have learned to do things and to be able and to be involved in sharing times with their parents or other people at home that they wouldn't necessarily have ever had the opportunity to do otherwise. And we want to celebrate that, because we know that when you look back on a period of time, if you look back on it negatively, then the energy that you've got to kind of move forward is drained a little bit. And what we want to be able to do is to say, look, there's some amazing things that have happened. You've been able to learn to make an omelette, maybe. You've been able to defrost the fridge, I think was the example of things that you used, Meg. There are things that have gone on that are great things that kids have been able to do. So we're going to create as much of a display opportunity of those things too, so that children and adults can see that although it's been a different 12 months, it's not been lost, it's not been wasted, it's been really purposeful and valued. And I think they're the key preparations that we're putting into place, alongside the sort of the mechanical operation of things, about getting the staffing rotas right and making sure that the bubbles have got somewhere to go at different times of the day and that sort of stuff, which is tough. I suppose that's the stuff I enjoy less. The creative stuff, the environmental creation is the thing that I really, really enjoy. And we're lucky, we've got brilliant staff who are really, really keen to kind of get on board and sort of do that in that way.
Great. And what about you, Jo, as a parent? How are you preparing your kids to go back to school?
So I would say, to be honest, I'm not sure as a parent you can fully prepare them. That's the honest answer. I think, I've got two mindsets there. I've got a teacher mind, I've got a parent mind. And when I'm in my home, I'm just a parent, and I can see all the teacher theory behind, or get them all settled, make sure they go to bed on time this week and that they're not going to go back next week feeling too tired and that kind of thing. But it's kind of, actually, I think parents need to realise that actually is not always possible, and you get a lot of idealistic ideas as a parent about what you should do on a run up. You sort of have to run with how your children are. For me, it's just saying to the children, right, we're going to go back to school. It is going to feel a bit of a shock to the system, because we've all got to get up and get out, because the reality of you all being at home, even me working from home, you can like log on and be in your dressing gown and stuff, can't you? And nobody knows. So, and I think we're just, for me, I'm saying to my daughter, I totally agree as a teacher with James. So, I hate this phrase catch up program. I'm really against all of that. I think that's totally wrong mindset for children. I just say to my daughters, you're going to go back and have fun and enjoy being around people again. It's one small step. It's a step in the right direction for you of seeing the world again, beyond being at home and our walk that we're allowed to do and things locally. This time you can actually see people for a few hours. I think, to prepare, what do you do as a parent? I don't know if you can fully prepare them, other than just chat to them about it when they need it and just reassure. I know my daughter worries that she finds maths difficult, for example, and she worries about going back to school and not being quick enough with her times tables, because there's this, pressure that they need to start learning them, and she teachers saying you need to know them for year 4 and this kind of thing. And I just say, don't worry about it. We're all who we are, and we've all got our strengths, and you're not judged on this planet whether you know your times tables or not. So you know, and my children, you know, I've been working throughout the pandemic. My husband's police, he's been at work. We've done our best to support them at home with learning, but there's been varied. And as my children are children of two key workers who haven't been able to protect them from the brunt of what's going on. They've known what's going on. You know, life has been very busy. My husband's done really long hours that have got worse. And my daughter, sadly, we all got COVID in January. And I'm still off work with extreme fatigue from that. So, you know, and my husband. So my daughter is going back. I've told her school she is going back rather wobbly because she has experienced us all getting COVID. And I think sometimes we actually forget that children are coming back like traumatized in some respects, because we're forgetting there are families that have had COVID as well. And I had to say to her teacher this on Monday, she is coming back having witnessed me and her dad rather ill, and her and her sister were quite ill, and she will need some TLC as well.
Yeah,
you know,
and I imagine there's probably quite a lot of young people in a similar position to that as well, who are coming back in, who've had perhaps bereavement. You know, there's going to be lots of people affected in all sorts of different ways.
And I think that we have to remember that. And as a parent, I said, for me, it's more important that she's given some TLC rather than let's now push her with a certain subject, because actually they've lived through all kinds of things. And I think we have to be supportive, and we think how we feel as adult. We have to think how we feel as well, you know, how children are feeling.
So we've just got a couple of minutes left to wrap up, but I think there's a really important question to perhaps to finish with, really, and that's the place of faith in all of this. Obviously, a lot of the people watching and listening to this are going to be people of faith who go to church. James, you're in a really privileged position in many ways because you're a head teacher, executive head of a church school. So faith can play perhaps a bit more of a part in your school than it can in other people's schools. How important do you think that is to the children at this time, a time of uncertainty? And are you doing anything particular along the faith lines as you head back in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think picking up on the point that Joe made at the end there, I think that church schools are in an absolutely brilliant position to be able to open their arms with that kind of compassion and love for those really particular needs that some children are going to have definitely worked through. I think now is a brilliant time for church schools because what we need to be able to do is go very much back to what drives us on through our values and our vision, and ensure that we recreate or refresh or restart the clock in the work that we do in our schools, very focused on those things that really, really matter to us, and that is the support and the encouragement and the nurturing of faithful values within our school. You know, kind of the black pool in the rock. So if what we can do is live out those gospel values every day to support our children, we know that what we'll end up doing is getting the best out of them in the end in terms of their academic output. So I think being in a church school is a huge advantage in these very difficult times, because it gives us a bedrock to be able to grow from and to build from. And certainly in terms of the specifics that we're working on, we're going to work really, really hard to provide we're getting a bit of experts on remote worship at the moment. So we're going to really work hard on creating some interesting and some thoughtful and reflective Zoom worship opportunities. We've got some very clear focuses for the classroom environments. Every one of our classroom environments has got specific opportunities for children to reflect and to share their feelings and thoughts and worries. So we're going to ensure that's one of the very key strands of the experience that children have the minute that they walk back in through this door, and that they get the opportunity to feel like that they are fully supported and fully encased in the love that we want to be able to share with them through the foundation that we have as a faith school.
That's great. And finally, Joe, obviously as somebody who goes to a Methodist church, do you think there's anything that churches could be doing at this time to support children and young people?
I think that churches, you know, just reaching out to the children, I think knowing and understanding them. I think it's been a difficult time for churches to be able to actually continue worship with children, and that's something that I think can be developed. But I think just the church praying for their children, supporting them, And I just agree with James. I actually teach in a church school myself, and I do, you know, I think it's about just sharing so that children know they're loved, they're valued, and that we live each day with what I say to my own children, with a sense of hope. And that's your, like, what keeps you steady as such, you know. And my daughters look around at nature and things and just seeing that hope around them, and it's spring, and I think that's a nice time for that hope to be happening. So I feel that churches can just reach out and just pray and bless their children as they're going on this next journey.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I found that a really interesting conversation, so it's been brilliant to have you with us. And just to say to anyone who is watching and listening, if you want to do any more advice or guidance, there's loads of things on our website, so do check it out and look at all the different organisations that you could turn to for that. But thanks again, and I really hope that the return to school goes well on Monday, and look forward to chatting with you again at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.